One day. Hi, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us for our 41st episode of Centering Justice. Centering Justice, for those of you who've not been with us, is a vision that came to me amid the pandemic and a place for us to elevate, amplify, and be inspired by those voices of people, Black and brown and melanated, who, in my opinion, we've not been hearing enough from. My name is Yodit, and I have the delight of hosting this webcast, soon to be podcast. And I've got something on my mind. Today, we're talking and listening to an amazing group of storytellers. And I wanted to maybe share a quick story of my own to set up today's episode. My father is an immigrant from Tigray, Ethiopia. He came to the US in political exile in the late 60s. He met my mother at Wayne State. And for decades, Dad has fought and organized on behalf of Ethiopia and her people. And at the roots of his mobilizing and organizing and activism has been a deep desire for Ethiopia's people to be seen, for our experiences to be witnessed, our histories and legacies to be a part of the global dialogue, and to be acknowledged for our contributions to humanity. Certainly, if you're a child of the 80s like I was, Ethiopia's story expands beyond Sally Struthers commercials and dangerous narratives that erase our realities. And 10 years ago, for the first time, I visited home. It was the first time it was safe for me to go. And from the moment I stepped off the plane, I knew that I'd been changed forever. I was walking through the airport and just looking at the faces of people who looked like me, whole swaths of people who looked like me, and not just me. I saw brothers from my neighborhood when I was growing up in Detroit. It wasn't really them, but their faces. I saw children who looked like my child. And as the car took us to my grandmother's house, I realized the lies of Western media. Here I was seeing this developed and developing country, people living like we are, eating, having coffee, taking their babies to school. As we wound through Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, making our way to my grandmother's home. When I got there, she had, like so many grandmothers, my picture from when I was like 9. Mind you, y'all, I'm 40 something. I've sent her many pictures, but still my 9-year-old picture. She had Haile Selassie's picture, which reminded me of the grandmothers, particularly Black grandmothers' houses I would go into that would have like Jesus, Martin Luther King, and Obama on their living room walls. Grandma had that too. And I just remember when I came back and folks asked me, what was it like? That I remembered the best way I could summarize it was that our story does not begin with pain. If you were raised in the West or disconnected from our African diasporic roots, you may not know that. Our story does not begin in the transatlantic slave movement. It doesn't begin on the shores of Turtle Island. Our story is deep and long, and as members of the global majority, I just, for the first time in my life, in that moment, understood who I am and the depth of the story of me, the story of we, and the story of now. And that's what's on deck today. Storytelling is a powerful form of witnessing. They can help mitigate, narrow stories and definitions of who we are. They can help shift shame, grief, sorrow, reminding us of our connections to one another and the planet. They can be revolutionary and rebellious. And this season of Centering Justice, our theme has revolved around the power of storytelling and narrative strategy, but really counter narrative. How do we bust up some of the dominant narratives in our communities and in the world? Dominant narratives that tell us who has value and who doesn't, who's who matters and who doesn't. And a longtime United Farm Worker organizer, Marshall Gans, who's now a professor at Harvard, is best known for the development of a concept called public narrative. This model is a leadership development practice. It's an exercise of leadership aimed at motivating us to invite others to join us in action on behalf of a shared purpose. It's not typically seen as like self-expression, although it certainly has your own vision and your own experiences, but it's also active listening and reflecting by those that we're engaging with. The model of public narrative has the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. Gans would say that the story of self is why you were called to what you've been called to, because everybody has a story. And the story of us is a collective story that Gans says illustrates our shared purpose, our shared vision, our shared goals as a community or even an organization. And just like with the story of self, the story of us focuses on a challenge, a choice, and an outcome. And so the story of now then is about the challenge that we are facing and the choices we must make and the hope that we can aspire towards. A story of now is urgent, it's rooted in our values, and it celebrates the moments. It's rooted in the values we celebrate in the story of self and us, and where there is a contradiction to those values that requires our action. I don't have to tell you all that all around us today are urgent challenges to share with everyone that will listen. Whether that's a story of the necessity for school reform and how the time is now to stop blaming children and start holding school leaders and politicians accountable. Or in the case of violence against innocent people in Gaza, that story may be to cease fire now. The story of now invites people to join in taking hopeful action. So thank you to our audience for being listeners and to our insightful, inspiring, brave, courageous, visionary, and inspiring story sharers that will join us today. Let's show them how their stories and our story of now can shake the universe. Please listen today with your heart. The first round of stories that we're going to hear are going to come forth from Kallista, Hamida, and Jacinda. And they are going to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then share their story. They will be spotlighted. And the next time you hear my voice is when we will engage the next round of storytellers. Thank you, Kallista, Hamida, and Jacinda.
Thank you, Yodit. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kallista Marie. It's been a fun morning already. My internet didn't want to work, so I'm here at the library. I was determined to be here. I am the daughter of Topaz. One of the proudest things that I say, it wasn't always that way, but her one and only daughter, born and raised in Ypsilanti. I am the product of Ypsilanti Community Schools. I went to Perry School, which was an all-Black school, and then I went to Erickson, which was a different demographic. I am the founder of Our Community Reads. And Our Community Reads is really about creating safe spaces for Black children to feel seen, valued, empowered, and celebrated, which is very much something that little Kallista needed, right? What I want to share today, I want to think about and invite you all to think about with me is the power of what we focus on. I think about when I was young and I think about my mom. My mom used to fuss at me so much, I could have sworn I was adopted because I was like, there's absolutely no way I could get in trouble this much, be your only child, and you actually gave birth to me. And it was so important to her every single day. I remember specifically being in high school and every single day coming home from the time I was probably in 10th grade to my senior year and sharing things with her. And she always had some type of correction for me about friends, how I engage with other people, because I was very much focused on other people's lanes. I always compared my lane to somebody else's lane. They a basketball player. I don't know how to play basketball, so I'm not enough. They friends with all the cool kids. I'm not enough. And it used to drive me crazy, but now being a mom, I realized it drived her, it concerned her. And as I grew older, those habits, because whatever we do, if we practice, it becomes a habit. And it followed me into my adulthood. It followed me into the types of choices that I made. And more importantly, it followed me into what I thought was possible for me. As I was considering, I was thinking about, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the movie What a Woman Wants. There was a scene in that movie where they were doing a commercial and the woman was jogging on the pavement. And in her mind, they were just saying how she was unwinding. And it was really giving you the mindset that when you jog, probably in their apparel, whatever they were trying to sell, that's a time for you. That's a time for you to clear your head, to get centered because you're out there on the pavement. And for anybody who knows me, there's been so many times that I've said, in my head, I'm a runner, which meant that in reality, I didn't think it was possible for me to be a runner. That stemmed from what I thought was possible because I wasn't really athletic when I was young. First of all, I loved having fingernails and I was not trying to do anything that was going to break them. So I kept saying in my head, I'm a runner. In my head, I'm a runner. And I have a friend named Ebony, and she would run these 5Ks. And every time she told me I was in this 5K, I was in this one, I would be excited for her. But there was a part of me that was like, man, I wish I could. And then I remember one day she sent me something about a run in the D. And I was like, what can I? I don't have to run. I could walk, right? And I did it. I signed up. I went down there. It was so many people. But I did it. I got it. I got at the starting line. I was the last one to cross the line with her mother. However, I did it. And that was the beginning of not, maybe not the beginning, but it definitely confirmed that I have had things in my head that made me believe that because I couldn't do something like somebody else did it, that the way that I did it was not valuable. And there were so many choices that I made that I did not even show up for my own life. I was the co-star instead of the leading actress. And I did that willingly. And for me, as I'm ending 2023 and I'm thinking about 2024 and what that means for me personally, as a mother, as a learning to be in leadership for the first time with Our Community Reads, I get to be a beginner and learn, and that's okay. I can still be in leadership. I can still be the star of my own doggone show. It does not have to look like anybody else's. And I just want to encourage everyone to remember, even if you don't do it like somebody else, the way that you do it, the way that you show up is valuable, especially if it's something that's burning in your heart to do. It was placed there for a reason. I don't care how long ago it was placed there. My friend Ebony was telling me, I remember in 2004 when I met you, you were talking about you were going to go back to school and you was going to write a book. And I was like, did I say that? I don't even remember. She said, and you were so excited. And I was like, girl, do it. I have written 3 books that are available on Amazon. And I did go back to school in my 40s in 2014, and I graduated from Washtenaw Community College. Even though I thought I couldn't do it, I wasn't smart enough because other people I went to high school with had their bachelor's, their master's. So that's it. So do it anyway. Do it anyway. And that is my invitation. Do it anyway. Stay focused on your lane. That's where your joy is. That's where the resources will come from. And that is where your impact will be, in your lane, not somebody else's.
Thank you so much, Kallista. I also couldn't help but smiling that apparently we changed our stories in similar ways, so appreciate it. My name is Hamida Bhagirathy, pronoun she, her, hers. I am a first-gen immigrant from the Indo-Caribbean. I am a woman. I am an offbeat person. I really enjoy exploring my curiosities. My favorite question is why not? And that's going to follow my talk for today. There's so much noise in the world that tells us who we are, who we should be, and how we should live. But where do those scripts end and where do we begin? Who are you? Not what society or your job or your friends or your kids say who you are. Who are you? What do you want? Not what society or loved ones or haters say you should want. What do you want? So I'm going to take it back. French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu talks about habitus, Kallista, habits that you talked about, are people's understanding of themselves and decision-making that are shaped by the habits and places and spaces they have internalized through socialization to believe is for them. Bring it back a little bit forward, I think about back in 2013 when I was in grad school. I was one of the few people of color, women of color, in my grad program, and I was talking with one of my advisors about some challenges I was experiencing. And I will never forget that she talked about, if a space is white, you can black or brown it up. No, if not you, who? And that stuck with me, and I don't always follow that, but it really stayed with me. And I hear that, and it's not that simple. I think about how moving differently or going in an unexpected space can be scary for you or other people. It's something new. Sometimes one's beloved community can want to protect you, but unintentionally project their own limiting beliefs. And sometimes people sort of feel comfortable with what they believe you are, who they believe you are, and how your relationship is. And if you change, that might require them to change too. This is something I definitely had not planned to talk about, but as I was searching for a story, it really came to me as what would ring most true. For most of my life, I have been obese, and apparently in 2023, I became tired of my own shit. I have worked through that, through fitness, weight loss, and I'm now overweight and continuing on my health journey. I have shared with a handful of friends what that has been like, including on being ambitious and maybe an overachiever and joining CrossFit I'm still joining. I'm working on it. And I got some folks who were really supportive. And then some of my other circles of friends talked about it not being a regular social justice thing to do, it being a space that was created for and by white men in the military, that I would harm my body, and I was really healthy beforehand, which in my estimation of me, which I think I'm probably an authority on, not quite. Um, and I sort of held on to or try to think about where are those messages coming from when I was moving closer to something I wanted for me. And I think about how from those beloved folks, some of them were coming from a place of fear. They wanted to protect me from a hostile place. Some of them were mourning the shift of our relationship. I wouldn't really be eating for entertainment any longer or going out and doing certain things they wanted to do. And I had to hold that while there may have been some really positive, helpful, loving intentions, it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I had to do what I wanted to do anyway. I ended up talking with my personal trainer, who also, by incidentally, is a Black man, and I shared the story with him. And he decided to continue the conversation while I was on the rowing machine, which was not the best idea, but that's okay. So while I was desperately trying to live and breathe, he shared how that was the start of CrossFit. But what does it mean to evolve and change and acknowledge a history, but also move beyond it? And he talked about how at that particular gym, they have a scholarship for women of color to join. So there would be more folks of color and more varied people because fitness is for everyone. And I've been thinking about that narrative of what does it mean to redeem oneself and change and grow. And, change means doing things differently and actively making different decisions, different choices. And sometimes that means going against one's own intuition, as sometimes our intuition is trained into our repeated behavior. What does it mean to break those cycles? And to want to do different, to want to choose different. I'm going to use a section from Dune, written by Frank Herbert here, something I repeat to myself when I feel a small scared as I'm doing something. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is gone, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So, as my therapist often says to me when I've spent a long time telling her about a story about a way I've been wronged, some challenge that has happened to me, what's the move? What are you going to do? I'll leave you with a few reflections, a few thoughts. Be unbothered. Other people's bothered doesn't have to be yours. Be your biggest hype man, woman, child, person. Believe you deserve better and more, because you do. Discern what needs to fuck off and just let it. Your words are your wand. Wield them wisely. Validate your voice. Play with your plasticity. Try new things, as Miss Frizzle says. Take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. Dream disrespectfully, respectfully. Who are you and what do you want? Thank you.
Thank you, Hamida, and thank you, Kallista. And gosh, thanks, Yodi. There's so much food for delicious thought. And I want to turn back to something Yodi said, which is, and I'm going to paraphrase it badly, and I'm sorry, but no one's story begins as a sad story. No one's story begins badly. My name is Jacinda Townsend. I am a novelist and professor of literary arts at Brown University. I am she, hers, grew up in Kentucky, which is a huge part of my identity. Thank you, Yadid. Our stories did not begin with pain. So We all know this pivotal scene in The Matrix, the part when Neo goes to visit the Oracle, and one of the young Padawans in training tells him, "Do not try and bend the spoon. It is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself." So the first time I saw that scene, the mantra was familiar because it's one I had instilled in me all my life by my mom. I had a fabulous mom, and this was one of the most fabulous things about her. She refused not to believe. I never much heard the word no. I never heard the word can't. My mom taught me can't didn't belong in a woman's vocabulary. When I was a young kid, maybe 5 or 6, I was a majorette. That first year of the Christmas parade before it started, and we were all just standing there in our short skirts, I complained to my mom that it was freezing because it was. My mom told me it wasn't. She said, think of the warmest thing you can think of. And I did. And pretty soon the parade started, and I started marching and twirling and smiling, and I wasn't cold at all. So my mom took belief far beyond that. In some ways, I was born on third base, but in some ways, I wasn't. As kids, my sister and I had 2 identities that the world thought were supposed to impede academic achievement. We were Black, and we were raised mostly in a single parent household. And on this, my mom didn't care what the world thought either. My mom left my dad and all his juicy money in Virginia and went back to Kentucky. And the years my parents were divorced were hands down the happiest of my childhood. But according to the world, a Black kid from a single parent home was supposed to maybe play basketball or maybe sweep the morgue, and that's it. Instead, my single mom sent me to Harvard at the age of 16 and sent my sister to Stanford at the age of 17. I was a National Merit Scholar, forever testing into the gifted program. My sister went on to Oxford and is now the most well-known Black animal rights attorney in America. None of this, according to conventional thought about Black and Latino kids and about kids from single parent homes, was supposed to be possible. Black moms and single moms, according to anyone with an ill-informed opinion, aren't tiger moms. Black and Latino kids, according to anyone you'd ask, do not test well, do not get straight A's, do not perform well academically. We're all, in fact, here to play ball and sweep the morgue. And so, as we who are involved in the schools know, we're supposed to wring our little color hands. We're supposed to invest in interventions that ultimately do nothing but line the pockets of the funds of school superintendents and administrators. And you'll hear this from everyone. Teachers who have a bias against a Black kid the moment they walk into a classroom, principals who tell you they're trying to work with a challenging Title I population, even school board members who say Black and Latino kids aren't going to test well anyway, so we should ignore these NWEA disparities and, get them to play some basketball. Well, let me tell you, friends, about a time when this wasn't true. Segregation. Yep, you heard me right, segregation. Here's a story about Albert Frank Cox, the first Black person in the United States to receive a PhD in mathematics from Cornell in 1922. He then went to teach in the segregated schools of Henderson, Kentucky. Here's another story. Shortly before Brown versus Board of Ed was decided and schools became integrated, a Black teacher in Kansas received a letter telling her that, quote, the majority of people in Topeka will not want to employ Negro teachers for white children. Your services will not be needed next year. And another story, shortly after Brown versus Board of Ed, a Missouri school district closed a segregated Black school, dismissing 11 Black teachers, one of whom had a PhD. These aren't isolated stories, y'all. This was rather the systematic decimation of an educational system that believed in its Black children. The decimation of an educational system wherein parents were heavily involved in the schools, and most importantly, an entire community of people who believed that their kids could and would achieve. What we have now are interventions designed not to work because they only want to tell an entire population that their homes are inferior, when we all know school achievement is less about a kid's having breakfast or not, because my kids skip breakfast all the time, than it is about the fact that one of my Black children, when she scored in the 98th percentile on the SAT, was told by her high school counselor that maybe she could apply to college. It's about the fact that her high school counselor had dissuaded her from taking any AP classes. It's about the fact that every time a Black kid walks into a classroom, a teacher's implicit bias flaps its wings. It's about the fact that Ann Arbor Public Schools refuses to incorporate goalposts and actual numbers in its equity plan. And friends, I invite you to agitate for that, because as a past board member, I can promise you that there is part of that current board that thinks Black and Latino students should just grow up and sweep the morgue. But mostly, friends, I want to invite you, when you hear these things about Black and Latino kids, that we don't do well, we can't test well, we can't do great things academically, not to believe the hype, because it's just not true. Thank you. And I forgot. I'm putting links in the chat if you want to read more about what I said. Thank you.
Listen, I just heard Public Enemy. Don't believe the hype. Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna take just a moment and invite all of us, really just like a moment to sort of breathe in these three really incredible stories that we just heard. I'm not going to do this summary justice. Please forgive me in advance, but I took some notes on what I heard. What do I believe is possible for me? Do I believe I'm enough? Take some time for you to clear your head, to be in your body, but don't break your nails. And interrogate, who are you in your head? And what beliefs are you holding about you that are getting in the way of what's been placed in your heart? Why can't I could be changed to what can I? And that made me think about a quote I heard years ago, that everything you put behind the words I am, you'll be. Kallista reminded us, encouraged us to do the thing that scares us anyway, but be in our lane. And Hamida came through with not why, but why not? What is it that you're longing for, and how has what you've been socialized to believe impacted you? What stories do you have about where you do or don't belong? Where's the equivalent CrossFit in your life? How are you projecting your fears onto others? Who told you to tell them they couldn't do something? A note to self, I'm gonna tell my trainer, don't be trying to talk deep to me while I'm doing intense cardio. I can't breathe. But also, what other truths might exist if we didn't hold on to a single narrative? What if those who have done harm or those who have perpetuated exclusivity, what if they redeemed themselves? What if they worked to break cycles? And then this piece around fear, I wrote down, fear is a mind killer. And the other thing I thought is that fear undergirds every tool of domination, supremacy, and oppression. It is the primary tool used to scare the bejesus out of us and make us inactive, right? It's not just an individual, I'm afraid of the boogeyman, right? It is a tool that is used to immobilize us. And so this question, If we know that, well, then what needs to fuck off? How do we need to be unbothered? How do we give ourselves to dream disrespectfully, respectfully, to ask what we want? And Jacinda came through with right behind with like, and by the way, it ain't the spoon that bends, it's you. And what would it look like if we refused as an act, an act of revolution, if we refused not to believe what we've been told about ourselves, but also about Black and Latino children? What if can't didn't belong in our bodies and in our vocabulary? So what narratives are we holding about the capabilities of our children, I must say, because they all belong to us. Stories are not isolated. They are used, as is fear, and I'm paraphrasing you, Jacinda, to decimate beliefs and suppress the truth. And the tactics we're given, these so-called interventions, are by design incapable of getting our children free because they're designed not to work. And so we have to agitate. They got to come with not just receipts, but goals and aims when they tell us that they're fighting for equity or justice for our children. And if you are someone who for a moment thought that any child is incapable of rising to their full potential, you are wrong. And you have to interrogate that thinking. If we believe any child is incapable of thriving, then we got to go back to the drawing board. I see some things in the chat before we move to our next set of readers. Oh, Michelle, did you like my PE? Oh, listen, daughter of hip hop, 50 years strong. Hamida, motivators are fear or love, right? Yeah. And Lauren, oh gosh, Lauren is here. Lauren could probably preach a whole sermon about how the system is functioning. And I'm going to put in the education system is functioning exactly as it was designed. And that's important for us to, I think, to understand. So often we're talking about bad actors and not bad systems designed to function in the way that they are rather. And it's okay. It may feel daunting, but it's okay for us. In fact, I encourage us to attack the systems and not people, right? Attack the systems. Good, good, good. Okay. Woo! Woo! You know what? All you got to do is tell the universe your dreams and they come. Okay. I'm so like feeling everything. I can't even find my doggone cursor. Here we go. Okay. Y'all ready? We got our next round of storytellers coming up. Just a reminder, they will introduce you to themselves, but I'm going to shout out Eileen, Erica, and Leslie coming to the stage. Come on, y'all.
Thank you, Yodi. Thank you and everyone here. I'm so grateful to be here to, shout out my story, shout out my dreams. So I'm here to speak and tell my story, to share my life rhythms. I'm also here to listen and to listen to your stories and to hear and feel your heart's beat. I come into this circle of centering justice, which the story of my being here begins with centering justice being my collective care circle. So who am I? I want to share with you a little piece of the beginning of my origi, which speaks to the fact that I am a champion for change. Part of the centering, for part of news program, part of Yodit's inspiration for us to find who we are. So my name is Eileen Sheila Ho. Ho Eileen, wonder, love, sing. First daughter of Philip Ho Chi Mei and Grace Huang Fui. First partner and mother of my An Ho family. I am a wonder of the world, the love of my people, my voice of our song. I am player of drums, drummer of dreams, dreamer of dances, dancer of play. There's more of who I am. But I want to pause there, dancer of play, because that is something I am centering nowadays in my role as a member in the Great Lakes Taiko Center community, where we are centering collective play. We are centering finding ways to touch that joy that is the spark of our lives, that is something that we deserve to find and reach and feel. And we do that together. So I play taiko. What is taiko? Taiko is an art form. Taiko is the people playing and performing that art form. Taiko is being together through the drums, through the dancing, through the dreams. It is rooted in traditional Japanese music and culture. But today, it continues to, for me and for many in my circles, to be a movement where we are getting in touch with ourselves. We are moving together. We are part of a global movement, cultural movement, arts movement that brings us to really back to who we are. And in being part of these circles, we are practicing. And in Taiko, as in life, I believe we are who we need. And this is a daily, weekly, monthly, every second practice for me. Practice, not perfect, as I've learned from teachings through connecting with people in the embodied social justice movements, teachings of Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, that what is important for me is to be in community with others, to share that we can do this. and most importantly, we are here to return to ourselves, and that is where the truth is. So this reminds me of just a couple of weeks ago, my Taiko ensemble, Ryan Taiko, we were performing, we were sharing at a local community event, Noel Night in Midtown Detroit. And we were playing through a song at the old main building, invited by the Department of Anthropology to share there. And I was, one of the joys that I have in playing taiko, especially in performing out in community, is feeling and seeing and getting the energy from the audience. And during this one song, a couple families with young children were in the audience, and there were several kids, little kids, who were from the corner of my eye, saw like they were dancing when we were playing and drumming. And then the coordinator, after we ended our first piece, was welcoming everyone to the event. And during that interval, a little boy just came running into running over to each of us who were playing. There were three of us playing, and like he just came up to me and hugged me. And I was like, yes. And I was like, I was really feeling it. And what I was feeling was that we were sharing the joy in our play, and the people who we were sharing with were feeling it. And this little boy was giving back the love, because that is really what this is all about for me, is the love that we have, that we can uplift each other with, that we can grieve with each other with. This is why we drum. So I was also part of a project in 2019 when the project, I call it Taiko Love Sounds, because I love taiko, and hashtag Taiko Love is a thing in our community, where we get to share with each other, with the world, like what it is about taiko that we love. And I decided in this project to write or create a piece of music or sounds, rhythms every day, because I was interested in empowering myself as an artist to, to tackle that challenge of like composing that so often we are told like, oh, you need to have all your skills, all your training to be able to do that, or special abilities. But I was like, we can do this. I can do this. So I chose to do this. And part of this was telling myself that I can tap into that love that I have, like for many different reasons, of taiko as an art, the musical patterns and rhythms that are so interesting to me, and the ability to express through them. And I can do that every day. And I'm going to, create something not as content, but as just things that flow out of me that I can capture in a moment, like snapshots of what it is that I feel like, oh yeah, I can show myself and share with others. Like, I can do this. This is what I did this day. So for every day in July 2019, I did something. I made something. And what I decided to make depended on what happened in that day for me. And on July 12th, I created a piece called Don't Look Away. And this was inspired by an event, a time when my partner, Larry, and I went out to downtown Ann Arbor, and we were participating and marching with people at a rally, and at this protest march, which was related to at the time, the immigration border policies of the US, and the fact that there were concentration camps of children being detained. So I came home later that night, and I put down in rhythm and words rhythm and words that come out of our mouths that speak to what we are feeling, because words matter, feelings matter. So don't look away. Never again is now. Close the camps. When we learn and teach and practice taiko drumming, we often first say it and then play it. So don't look away. Don, doko, don. Mm, 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 mm. Never again is now. Teka-tet-tet-tet-ten. Teka-tet-tet-tet-ten. Don't look away. Never again is now. Close the camps. Don, hon, don. Close the camps. Don, con, don. So these rhythms flowed out of me. I captured them in my garage band. I could arrange them in different ways, have the rhythms overlapping, just as when we are speaking with each other and we are each taking our turn or talking with each other, talking over each other, our rhythms, our words overlap. They might synchronize, they might not match up. But this is what, in my practice of drumming, I come to practice in life in terms of figuring out how it is that we can play together, how it is we can listen to each other, how it is we can express our joy in being alive together, in being alive and together. So these are the rhythms that resonated with me that day, and I put it into drumming. But there are many things, even those of us who might be hearing and feeling the same rhythms might be hearing and feeling our own thing, right? So these are the things that I'm feeling today. From on that day was Don't Look Away. Today, Free Palestine. On that day was Close the Camps. Today, Cease Fire Now. So there's a lot. And I would invite you to, in the chat, whatever, feel for yourself, share with ourselves, listen to what is in your heart, in your body, and let's be free, centering justice, transforming the future together, together, together. Thank you.
That was so powerful, Eileen. I have loved stories my entire life. Other people's stories, never my own. Now, fears kept me from telling my own stories. But as Kallista said, or encouraged, do it anyway. My name is Erica Thrash-Sall. I am the only child of Arthur and Gloria, the wife of Isa, mother to Nafi, Amadou, and Zaina. I'm a mentor, a fierce advocate for older adults and the people who work to support them. And in my newest role, I am a joyful caregiver of my parents who are in their 80s. I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan, but Detroit is home. It's where I became an adult. It's where I began my professional life, and it shaped me. I had the honor of going back to my hometown of Flint and serving the community as the leader of an aging services organization. And I took all that I had learned over the years and poured into that time and space. I am now leading an organization in downtown Seattle called Horizon House. I'm a reformed workaholic. I love reading, art, wine, coffee, dessert, and being outdoors in that order. And, some fucked up choices led me here, and I am so grateful for them. 2 years ago, a friend of mine posted that on Facebook, and it completely reframed the way that I had been experiencing my life. I've been very disappointed with myself and ashamed because I didn't feel like I had lived up to my potential. As a young adult, I had lots of opportunities as a child, as a young adult. My parents, as an only child, they had financial resources. Not having financial resources, that was not my story. I was very well supported. I had been exposed to things, but what I didn't have is direction. And I often wonder, had I had direction, would it have been helpful? Because I also didn't listen. And that not listening, not having direction, it meant my path wasn't clear. It meant that it would take me so long, to do things that I saw other people doing. But as I did get on the path and I began to achieve, it just never seemed like enough, no matter how many awards I won, no matter how many people that, expressed they were helped, I still never felt like it was enough because I felt like my bad choices had limited my professional growth. And I often lamented about how these decisions, impacted my children's lives. I am a firm believer that we are here not just by the decisions that we make, but by the decisions that our parents and their parents before them make. And I was so concerned that these choices I had made and how they would impact my children and my children's children. And what I did with that just sense of shame was what has really helped me grow. And it is the thing that allows me to stand in immense gratitude for where I am today. I had this wavy path. It was rocky, it was a journey that was painful, but it has allowed me to be a champion for young Black and Indigenous people of color trying to reach their professional and their educational goals. I've had the pleasure of mentoring so many talented young adults over the years, and my goal has always been to help them avoid the mistakes that I made and to help them find a more direct path on their professional journey. But something shifted over the past 3 years. I realized that, all of these things that I was sharing with the mentees that I had, they were things that I wasn't practicing myself. And this path that I was laying out for these young people, the fight that I was fighting for them, I realized that I also deserve to have the same experience for myself. I didn't need to be this martyr. I was sacrificing so much, tolerating much more than I should have for the sake of paving the way. But what I realized is I was demonstrating some awful habits, some awful professional habits where I didn't have boundaries, habits where, I was not, it wasn't balanced. I was doing things without clear understanding of what the benefits were going to be. And I was all about teaching young people, don't make these mistakes, don't do this. But over time, I realized that it wasn't enough just to fight for others, that I needed to lead by example. And so I started taking my own advice and practicing what I preached around creating opportunities and not waiting for people to select you. Seeking positions that provided you with the resources you needed for, comfort in your life and also to help invest in other people. You didn't need to be a martyr and work on behalf of people, but not be able to take care of the things you needed. I began to preach around, being in a position to sit at the table with other decision makers so that you can truly leverage your position in place to support others. And the one I think that was so important was around building and investing in relationships. This was something that I preached and preached, but I wasn't practicing. Through being a workaholic, I wasn't spending time with people. I was not, I was a person, if you invited me to something, 9 times out of 10, I was not going to show up. I was showing up, people were surprised. And oftentimes I just didn't get the invitation at all because people thought, well, she's not going to come. I rather than working on a project, spending extra time doing work, I really should have been spending time investing in relationships, nurturing relationships. And so this is something that I practiced, but I wasn't preaching. And lastly, another thing that I was really preaching, I was such a hard doer, do. But the truth is, I wanted to have support and resources around me so that I could think and advise. And this is something that I was helping people find a quick path to. But again, I wasn't thinking of it for myself. And so, I started to think, I'm encouraging young people to reach for the stars, reach for the sky. And in all practicality in my field, get into that C-suite of an organization. But I was afraid to take the leap myself. And I was afraid. I had put barriers in front of myself. Well, what if people are interviewing me because they just want to check a box? What if, I get this role leading this organization and the people I'm leading, struggle to follow? What if in my organization, what if residents, don't feel confident with having, a Black woman leading them? My organization is building a huge project. What if the new people won't move here? So I had all these what ifs. And what I did is I just moved them out of the way. I thought about, what would you tell your mentees? What would you tell them? And so I told it to myself. I'm not going to block my own blessings, my own opportunities with my what ifs, things that have absolutely proved false for me. So I got out of my way and I jumped. And the thing that has really resonated, what has happened is taking that leap has been a true blessing. I am one of 6 Black CEOs that are in actual retirement communities. And out of those 6, mine has the largest assets and the second highest revenues. And I am supported by residents who are in their 80s and 90s, who every Friday stand on a corner with Black Lives Matter signs. My body, my choice, love is love. This is the community that I'm around. And so while some fucked up choices led me here, I am grateful for them. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, excuse me. My name is Leslie, and I am a business owner and poet. In fact, everything comes from the lens of being a poet. So even the process with digital marketing is a poet. And I also founded the Albert Williams Voter Engagement Day and Voting Corner. So some of you might have heard a quote. It's called, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." Who's heard it? Show of hands. Okay. So the quote is from the late Ida B. Wells Barnett. So I have mentors that I've had through my life and a couple now, but I also have what I call ancestral mentors. And so Mother Ida is one of my ancestral mentors. And she was born in July of 1862, 6 months before her family's Juneteenth. And she passed away in the spring of 1931, when many Black folks were beginning to hope again. Her first articles about race and politics and gender were published under the name of Iola. So for her own safety, she had to erase herself. She was a journalist and an activist, and she helped form, found, and inspire dozens of organizations, including the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Now we call it NAACP. Also, she created and maintained the red record of lynching victims, literally just having the names, what the devastation was, you know, how much it cost to the community, all of that. And she walked beside Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Harriet Tubman for women's suffrage. So in 1930, you know, less than 2 years before she died, you'd think she'd be all over the place, right? But that wasn't the case. In fact, there was a book that came out, the father of, oh gosh, I think it was the father of the African American history or something like that. And she was written out. So she wasn't named as one of the co-founders of the NAACP. She wasn't invited to some of the dinners. She wasn't given her props for organizations that she had started. And so actually one of her doctors who, you know, knew her outside of this, he said, you're going to have to tell your own story. So for over 50 years, she has spent a lot of time and efforts towards turning the light of truth on the wrongdoings done to other people. But for the first time, well, for the second time, she had missed her own erasure. So in her last months, not quite 2 years on Earth, she turned her diaries into an autobiography. At a book launch by her great-granddaughter, who also published some of her diaries, Michelle Duster, she intimated that part of her reason for keeping such detailed diaries was to remember and keep an account, to essentially write herself back into existence as she encountered so many erasures on a daily basis. Since that day, I've often thought about the question, is it better to be forgotten or to be remembered incorrectly? So I don't know the answer to which is better, but I made a vow to myself in 2015 to accept neither. Not for me, not for my ancestors, not for my descendants. We cannot center justice with erasure. But this isn't so we can get a piece of flooring etched with our names or in a museum. The reason that I'm writing myself back into existence is much more important than that. I want to help people. I want to help myself. I want to heal myself and my children. Also, I want to declare the urgent need for us to remember, retell, and reconnect with the stories of our ancestors and live in history in the form of family and community members. In 2015, I tripped into a project. I call myself the accidental activist that would become what I believe will be one day my life's work. This is when I connected with folks in my family's hometown of Brownsville, Tennessee, and became a family advocate for my great-granduncle, Elbert Williams. Uncle Elbert, a 31-year-old outspoken secretary for the local NAACP, was the first person to be killed in the line of duty attempting to vote in 1940. His story was intentionally buried for close to 75 years. When people would mention his name, they say, you better watch it. You don't want to happen. You don't want to happen to you what happened to him. Even Thurgood Marshall was unable to obtain justice. Just the mere mention of his name was whispered among family and community members as to not get folks upset. Even though his name was mentioned at the funeral for Medgar Evers, most American Blacks or otherwise did not know the name of Elbert Williams. My grandma privately remembered her favorite uncle to me when I was a child. It would take all those years before the FBI released the unredacted files to a white cold case investigative lawyer. Inside those files for Uncle Albert, the legal files, there were also pieces of our family. There were artifacts. There was the first picture I was able to see of them. I saw my great-grandparents' handwriting, their marriage certificate, all of that while they were trying to seal and bury his truth, and his story had been buried along with that. Several months after the lawyer and historian contacted me, I found out that I was in the family way, as they say in the South. Also known as pregnant. As soon as I found out that the baby was a she, we decided her name. As legend would have it, there was a city named Zazzau in the area we now call Nigeria. The king groomed both of his granddaughters to be leaders, since he did not have any sons or grandsons biologically. The eldest granddaughter became Queen Amina, a warrior queen who was gone most of the time, and many stories have been told. The younger granddaughter, Zaria, had the gift of grace and discernment of character from infancy. The king began to check her face for clues on whom to trust as young as 2 years old. When Amina became queen and Princess Zaria became the royal hostess, her mom had the name of the city named to Zaria. She didn't do this to make her name be in gold or put her above everybody so tough. She wanted to make sure that she would not be erased in the patriarchal history of the days. For the first time in my life, I realized that I did not want to be erased either. As I has taken on this Albert Williams Voting Corner and telling the story of my great-granduncle, I'm also telling the story of my grandmother and my family and myself. And I've decided that not me, not my ancestors, nor my family or my children and descendants will be forgotten if I have anything to do about it. So that's my only thing. Write yourself back in. Thank you.
Mm, mm, mm. I want to share the takeaways that the three of you offered me, and then I want to save a little bit of time before we log off to hear from others of you in our audience and our storytellers, who will all come back on the screen in a moment. But the question that came to me for all of us is, what did you hear that shook something or awakened something in you? So if you can be thinking about that. Eileen, this invitation to notice the rhythms of our heart really resonated with me. I am aware that we have been socialized to be disconnected from our bodies, we valorize intellectualism, being cerebral, all of that. So I love thinking about literally like noticing my heartbeat and the rhythms of my heart. I'm so glad that Centering Justice is your collective care circle, because it is. But I think you also invite us to think about if we even have care circles. You drummer of dreams, you dancer of play. Thank you for reminding us that we deserve to find and reach and feel joy. And that we can use ancient art forms like taiko to be together, to drum together, to dance together, and to create movements that not only help us get in touch with ourselves, but with our global family. It is taiko, and really most forms of art and practice and play and embodiment are they support us getting back to ourselves. And so you made me think about, what is my every second practice? And how do I feel joy and share that with others? And when I can't find it, that you reminded us that we are who we need, so that we have a community of folks who can help us find our way back to ourselves. And then this invitation not to look away, it made me think about the quote that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And particularly in the last 2 months, I think fear, I think this thing is happening over there, it doesn't affect me. I think this challenge to our capacity for love and the ways in which trauma immobilize us can look like indifference. And we can use joy, grief, memory to be alive together, whether the pain is right here or far away. And you invite us to be free. Thank you for that. I needed that reminder. Erica, how are we carrying our lessons over time? That's what you made me think about. What fucked up choices led you to your purpose is what came to me. And how have my failures actually contributed to the moment I'm in today? It made me wonder your invitation to, what are we recovering from? What are we reforming? What are we lamenting that needs to be named, and then by choice, by agency, by self-empowerment, transformed? And when we're stuck, what did we need, or do we need, in terms of direction, guidance, support? That invitation to, like, I didn't get it from my, nuclear family, but we actually have permission to ask for guidance and support without shame, without despair, without feeling inadequate. And we are all, each of us, if you are alive in this moment, you are engaging in intergenerational realities, and we can choose to engage in intergenerational healing and repair. We might begin that by asking what you mentioned: what habits contradict our truest self or our truest needs? Have we assessed or done a benefit analysis of the time and choices we're making? Are we waiting to be chosen? And that made me think about something a friend of mine says: honey, if you not at the table, you on the menu. A few other things that you percolated for me, questions I'm asking myself: what relationships am I investing in, and which ones do I need to divest in? What barriers have I placed at my own feet? What blessings have I blocked with my what ifs? And then finally, my affirmation that I've written on a Post-it and will be putting in my bathroom, that I'm a boss and I got receipts to show it. Thank you so much, Erica. And Leslie, not only are you a poet, but you are a keeper of our ancestry. You are a griot. So you asked us, who are our ancestral mentors? Who's our I to be? And what parts of ourselves have we had to erase? This is a question I asked based on what you said. What parts of myself have I had to erase to be safe? And as a follow-up, what histories am I keeping from being erased for my children's grandchildren? This importance of memory keeping and accounting. I'm going to put a resource that a friend just shared with me. I'm sure there are many, but it's called Storyworth. I'll let y'all dive into it if you're interested, but it's a way to capture your loved ones' stories You just get a prompt in email, they fill it out, and then you can like make a book. A friend of mine is doing this for her parents who unfortunately died suddenly within months of each other. You know, that broken heart thing. But they had started doing this some years ago. And so now she has this beautiful gift in first person of her parents talking about their lives. And then you talked about vows. What vow would you make to yourself as you take up space, not just for you, but for your ancestors and your descendants? I loved, because you are a griot and a poet, that you use the word centering justice and that you remind us that we cannot center justice where there is erasure. So then, how might we understand our healing being tied to each other and to all of humanity? And part of that taking up space of writing our own story is a bold act against that erasure. We speak Uncle Albert's name, and you reminded me, and I want to encourage people. The university, if you're in Washtenaw County, the University of Michigan Museum of Art right now has an exhibition up on the potters of Evansville, South Carolina, including David Drake, an enslaved potter who made some of the most beautiful work. And his descendants, as well as the descendants of other enslaved potters, are showcasing and holding and keeping memory of David's important work, but also the contributions to pottery that these enslaved people made. And it's this interesting dichotomy of pain and production, right? That even in the brutality of enslavement, these beautiful works of art were being created. So do go visit that if you get a chance. So now, Carly, pull all these beautiful storytellers onto the screen with me. And would love to, first of all, can we just collectively, y'all, show them some love, some chat love, just thank them for witnessing, for telling their stories today, for inspiring us. Yes, Carly. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So that prompt, and again, for those of you who are listening in our audience, and I'll drop the prompt in, for our storytellers are going to share with each other, and you all are welcome to contribute to the chat, and I'll share it out. What was something you heard from someone else that awakened or shook something in you? Y'all getting all the love in the chat.
Did we say out loud?
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. So, I first of all, I was saying I took something from everybody.
Right.
Yeah, it was like
hard to pick
so
one
much.
thing. Right. It's
Yeah,
hard to
right.
pick
So
one
I gotta
thing.
pick, I gotta choose. I think Hamida, you had me at hello with the with the idea of what is social justice. Like, so I remember the first time I wrote activist, like actually wrote it, somebody said, when did you become an activist? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I waited until I heard someone else say it to me, which was another 12 years. And I think about what kind of progress I could have made if I had accepted that and just named it for myself and just went with it, raggedy activist as it may be, but just went with it and waiting instead of waiting for someone to tell me extrinsically that that's what I could be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Leslie. What else? Something that stirred you, awakened you, resonated.
Sending you much love, Leslie. I'll drop more in the chat. So I think y'all who know me, I'm a bit offbeat. I mentioned that in my bio, and I always look for more opportunities to play. And Eileen, as you were talking about play and community, it just reminded me, I've been so serious today. So
Mm,
I need to find some play after this.
mm. Thank you, Hamida. Play. Yeah.
Today, there was so much from everybody. I'm going to do better at taking notes one day. I don't know how old I'm going to be when I do, but thank goodness this is recorded because I will be watching it again. But I definitely have to say, Miss Erica, when I say you told my story in a way that the little girl in me needed to hear somebody tell her story, and listening to you mention, because I'm an only child too, listening to you mention how your mistakes got you right where you needed to be and the choices that you made. Everything in me was screaming like, is she talking about you? Yes, she was talking about, and you helped me recognize. I remember Sharissa Allen, she did a speaking engagement and she said it was all necessary.
Mm,
And that is what almost every single word you said screamed loudly to the little girl in me. Kallista, it was all necessary. So I thank you for that. I truly, and when I say when you're ready to do your women's retreat, I'm about to start saving my money now and I'm putting my money aside for my ticket. So you go on, girl, you know, whatever it costs, I'm there.
she's not lying either, Erica. She will show up. She'll be in Denver so fast. So you gotta hurry up and scramble. Kallista is a ride. You hear me? She gonna ride for you. Uh, we have time to hear from our audience, like a minute if there's anybody that wanted to share something there. For as much as we do this 41 times, we never want to be creating or talking about justice without the voices of community. And so we ask and invite every time for you to communicate with us. What did you love? Where can we grow? And what else do you want to hear? So that's in a survey that I put in the link. Everybody, including our storytellers, is welcome. But is there someone, this reminds me of church. Is there someone in the audience that has something they would like to share? Yeah, Cynthia, me too. So grateful for this community. Then I think what I want to do, I'm okay, I'm gonna wait. They say wait 10 seconds because there might be somebody, so I'm gonna wait 10 seconds. All right. So our beautiful Eileen shared that they have drumming music to share. And so I want to close us out with, I should say, Carly, want to close us out with Eileen's Don't Look Away. So why don't we just meditate on that? Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.